Growing a Greener World is made possible in part by
the Subaru Crosstrek, designed with adventure in mind, built in a zero landfill plant, so you can roam the earth with a lighter footprint. Subaru, proud sponsor of Growing a Greener World.
I'm Joe Lample. For 10 years, Growing a Greener World has told the stories of the people and the places who are making a difference in the health of our environment and the sustainability of our global community. But as we embarked on our 11th season, life changed overnight. So many things we took for granted would never be the same again. Now it's up to each of us to take a more active role in not just saving our planet, but making it better. Feeding our families with organically grown food, conserving vital resources, protecting natural habitats, starting in our own backyards. Growing a greener world. It's still our mission, and it's more important than ever. Many of the most popular plants we enjoy today, from the top arboretums down to the most memorable backyard gardens, originated from plants that came from faraway places, oftentimes from cuttings like this. And although these twigs don't look like much, they contain all the genetic information needed to make an exact copy of the parent. And although the process of propagation isn't all that complicated, the mystique behind the practice prevents many of us from trying this ourselves at home. So today we're going to demystify the process and show you how to make a lot more plants for free from one of the nation's most up-and-coming experts. Over the years, I've met a lot of people that share my passion for plants and making more of them. Some have made it their full-time career. Brie Arthur is one of those people. In fact, she's part of a small group of nationally recognized rock stars of young horticulturalists making their mark on the world by making more plants. She studied horticulture and landscape design at Purdue University. After graduating, she immediately started putting her passion and talents to work as a full-time propagator. 15 years later, Brie estimates she's added literally millions of plants to botanical gardens and backyards across the country.
Well, so plant propagation was the first class I ever got an A in when I was in college, and it felt like a huge accomplishment. And I realized in that class that I had some sort of intuitive understanding about how to propagate plants. Different types of wood, how to graft, how to stick cuttings, when to sow seeds. And I decided I had to follow that for my career. It was really exciting and inspiring to be good at something like that. It's really nice to know that in nature, plants, their only mission is to propagate. And with a home gardener, with a little bit of help, you can really excel at producing plants. I think more home gardeners don't propagate for themselves because they're intimidated by the process. My goal as a propagator is to take that away, make people understand that it isn't hard, it isn't complicated. You don't have to have a fancy, sophisticated greenhouse to be able to propagate plants. There are two ways to propagate plants. Sexually, which is from seed, which will have a lot of genetic variability, meaning you aren't guaranteed what you will have the next season. Or asexually, which is essentially cloning. And cuttings are really the most relevant way to do asexual production. It's very easy, doesn't take a lot of time, and you're guaranteed to get what you're looking for.
So Brie has an exciting day planned for us. We're off to one of her favorite collection sites to take cuttings. Now, as any good plant professional would have, you need a cooler, right?
You do.
I like how you think, Brie.
It may not be as exciting as you're hoping for.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. But you do have all your important tools in here, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so let's see what you have, because you never want to get out there and find that you're missing some important things.
No, you definitely don't. Well, first off, I like to have a good resealable bag.
Yep.
This will help keep the cuttings moist so they don't dry out.
Very important, because if you took a cutting and got it home and it was dry, it's worthless, right?
Exactly.
Pretty much. Okay, so you have your bags.
To go along with that, you need to have a spray bottle of water. This way you can miss the cuttings right when you take them.
Yeah, just a little extra added insurance.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
Another bottle here is repurposed for using rubbing alcohol. This is a two-step process for keeping your equipment clean.
Yeah.
A quick spray with rubbing alcohol, and then you burn the blade.
Yeah, and so it's nothing to fear, very simple process, but you know, when you take cuttings from one plant and then go to the next, you really do run a risk of spreading diseases from one to the other.
And this ensures that you won't.
Good plan. Okay, now I took the liberty of getting your trusty holster out.
Excellent. So I like to keep 2 sets of pruners, one for woody material,
Yep.
one for more softwood or herbaceous plants.
Now, why wouldn't you use one for both?
Well, you don't want to mash the cuttings, and if it's a really soft cutting,
Yeah.
a smaller blade will do a better job.
Okay, good. And I also see you have your sharpener with you.
Yes, and I like to have that in the field so that my pruners are always sharp.
So even if you went and sharpened these before you ever left, you run the risk that out there in the field you get into some wood, you might do a little damage or dull your blade.
Exactly. That's a quick 2-second fix.
Doesn't take up any space. It's smart to have this.
Exactly.
Good. Okay, you have pen and markers.
Yes. I like to keep track of everything that I'm collecting in the field.
Yep.
It's really important, you know, to write the name. I like to keep track of the date and the source, that I have that to reference back.
And it's so important to do that in the field because if you waited to get home, you can't tell one cutting from the next.
No, you can't.
Yeah, and you got to have good information.
Got to have good information. And keep your labels dry, that way you can write on them.
Yeah, okay. I think that's everything.
That's everything. I think we're ready.
All right, let's go do it. So here we are in the middle of the summer, and a classic time to take a lot of cuttings from many types of plants, but it's not the best season to take cuttings from all plants, right?
That's right. I like to stick deciduous trees and shrubs in early spring. They tend to root best on softwood.
Okay.
And then you have the whole summer for them to capture energy through photosynthesis before they drop their leaves in the fall.
Okay, and when you say stick, you're referring to taking the actual cutting and putting it in the potting medium, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now in the summer, that classic season for a lot of plants that we have in our backyard gardens. Talk to me about why that's best for some plants.
Well, this is the season for broadleaf evergreen production. They root best on semi-hardwood, meaning the spring flush slightly hardened.
Okay.
And this applies for camellias, azaleas, rhododendrons, sort of all the classic southern heritage plants.
Yeah. Now what about conifers? I've always sort of had a difficult time with conifers. They're slower to root out, a little bit tricky.
I do like conifers in late summer into fall. They tend to root best on hardwood. And then you'll leave them in your potting media for a longer period of time. They can take anywhere from 9 months to 14 months to root out.
So once again, for everything there's a season, and it explains also why you're a full-time propagator too.
Yes.
You stay pretty busy all year.
Plant propagation is a year-round business.
Wow. I love walking under the canopy of trees like this. Never gets old. But here we are at the J.C. Ralston Arboretum where you do your work and probably your playground, right?
Absolutely.
I love this place. But to think that you're coming here and you're taking these cuttings as a pro, and yet you were telling me that you still seek permission and kind of have somebody oversee your work?
It's really important to be courteous and get permission. I like to have a staff member with me so that I know that I'm taking cuttings from plants that they would like for me to propagate off of, and I'm making the plants look better as a means of propagating.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that because that says a lot for somebody like John Q. Public walking through. You just don't do that with your pruners and start snipping away.
No, there's definitely permission needed.
Yeah, and even in a backyard, you just don't do that.
No.
But while we're here, I think we ought to make hay while the sun's shining and take as many cuttings as we can, you know, get away with.
That's right.
Because I'd like to kind of get some home with me too. So we have the Camellia here, one of my favorite broadleaf evergreens, and the perfect one to be cutting this time of year, right? Because it's semi-hardwood at this point. So define, though, exactly what we're talking about when we're looking for semi-hardwood. How do we know that?
Well, what we're looking for is this new growth that's slightly hardened. So in the spring, this would have flushed a very soft green, and it would be really flexible and it would break.
Right.
By midsummer, you can see it's actually turned a nice brown, distinguishing it from the hardwood of last year's new growth.
Right.
So this is really the ideal cutting that you'd want to take.
Yeah, so as far as semi-hardwood, it's pliable to the point that you can bend it over like this, but it's not going to break like if it were new wood or if green wood, it would just kind of crush. This is not so pliable here.
This is not too pliable, and this is definitely not what you want to be sticking. This will take a lot longer to root.
And the other thing that I think it's important to note is that we're lucky here with the Camellia because it gives us a real clear indication with a different color from the hardwood. But not all evergreens are like that. Sometimes they're just much harder to tell the difference.
What you want to do is go from the tip down and see where the nodes have changed. So that's really the easiest way. You can look at any shrub.
Yep.
From the tip down, you should be able to see where the new growth came from.
So here you can see that right here, plus you get the color, so you get 2 clues as to where to start that new growth. Okay, so now when you're coming in here to make the cut, when you take the sample home, you're not cutting it right here because you want to get multiple samples and be efficient with your cut.
Exactly, and what I want when I'm sticking is a fresh cut. So what I would come in and do is actually take this branch down to here.
Yeah.
And now, when I go home to dissect this, I'll actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces from one cut.
Nice. So we're off to a good start.
Yes.
All right. So this goes in the bag and labeled and more cuts.
Exactly.
All right. You want the date on here?
Yes, please, and the location.
Got it. In a bag.
And a bag.
Okay.
And these are going to be a little large to fit, so we'll just cut these down.
Okay.
Slide them right in.
And you need the mister.
That's right. Give it a few good mists. Excellent.
All right. And the
then
tag.
You can drop that label right in.
Okay.
Then we can seal it, and we're ready to
All
move
right.
on to the next plant.
Okay. Good?
Excellent.
Great.
We're ready to prune.
Okay, so we're checking out a new gardenia. I love this form. Is that one of the best properties of it?
Absolutely. It's a great dwarf that fits into every landscape.
Yeah, that's good. We need more of those. How hardy is it?
It's very hardy. It's survived without any trouble to single digits.
Wow, that's saying a lot for gardenia. So Brie, we're back from the Arboretum, our awesome adventure collecting plant cuttings, but now we're ready to process those cuttings. The first point I want to make is that you do not need a fancy greenhouse to be successful with propagation, right?
That's correct.
So what are the objectives?
Well, what you have to do is balance the plant's rate of respiration with the relative humidity in the environment.
Okay. All right. So in layman's terms, what we're talking about here, we want to create a moist environment and we also want to keep it cool. And a good way to do that is to take your tray or your pots and keep them down low, maybe on top of some gravel in a contained area. So maybe some plastic around the sides and then mist it periodically throughout the day to give you that environment. So we have that out of the way. That's good to know. Now we have our media, the thing that we want to plant our cuttings into, and there are some good options and some not so good options. Talk about that.
Well, I think the bad option that people sometimes fall into is buying seed sowing mix, which is a vermiculite-based soil.
Good
it
for
holds
seeds.
Entirely too much moisture for cuttings.
Not so good for cuttings. And that's this right here, so it's very fine. But this is what we're after, right?
That's right.
So what I see in here is, first of all, perlite, and that's this right here. And this is designed to actually improve drainage and create air pores, air pockets. Okay. I see some coarse bark in here. That obviously is to create some more space in the soil.
And better drainage.
And better drainage. And then just some potting mix.
That's correct.
So you can buy all three of these separate and mix them together, and sometimes you can find it already mixed together, right?
That's right.
Okay, so that's what we want. We have our media out of the way. Now we need to plant it into something, and again, we have good options and not so good options. Talk about those.
So the ideal option and what nurseries tend to grow in are these cell trays.
Right.
And you know, it's a small space and it has great drainage because it has great depth.
Okay.
For homeowners who don't have access to cell trays, we have a bad option and a good option.
Okay.
The bad option, you can see it's got the depth, but it's too big. It's gonna hold too much soil. By the time the plant roots out, probably rot.
Okay.
Better option is this. It also has the depth, but it's significantly smaller.
Right. Plus you're using less media, less water, and you can get a lot more of these into the same size space.
That's right.
Hence a lot more cuttings. I like that option. Okay, so now we have that done. We're ready to process our cuttings. And I understand there are exceptions to every rule, but as some general steps for our cuttings, what do we want to do here to process these?
Well, what you really want to have is a cutting that has 3 to 4 leaves and at least 2 nodes that will be underground.
Okay.
So on a cutting like this, we're gonna take it off of the central stem, just like that. I'm gonna actually take this leaf off, and I'm gonna remove the flower bud because you don't want any energy to go into flowering. You want all the energy to go to rooting.
And you referenced the nodes. The nodes are the future, or the area where leaves could come out in the future.
That's right, and it's actually where roots will come out.
Okay, and we want 2 of those at least underground.
Now on a hardwood or semi-hardwood cutting, you want to give a small wound,
Okay,
just like that.
and you're exposing the tissue. The reason for that?
That is so that it will absorb more rooting hormone.
Okay, and that's this right here. We have some options. You're using the liquid form.
I use the liquid for broadleaf evergreens. I think that it works the best for
Okay.
these sorts of plants.
Okay.
You want to dip it for 8 to 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So that it absorbs all the hormone.
Okay. Now we do have several options for this. They all work. They're all basically comprised of the same components. Some are better for others in different applications. Don't worry about the details right now. We'll have that information for you later. Okay, so we're gonna put that into the container at this point.
And all you want to do is center it in the cell.
Yep.
Make sure 2 nodes are underground and give it a light squeeze. And that will make it so there's no air pockets surrounding it and it won't dry out.
Perfect. Okay, so 1 down, about 200 more to go, right?
That's right.
Okay, so we'll get busy. Now I know this was a lot of information, but you do not have to worry about trying to remember all of this because we're gonna have it for you on our website. Under the show notes for this episode, Brie's got a great article for you. The website address, it's the same as our show name. It's growingagreenerworld.com. Okay, I'm ready to get busy. I'll do the
right.
buxus. Now our goal for these cuttings is to get them into the landscape, but it doesn't happen overnight. There's quite a few things that take place between now and then, whenever then is. And let's talk about what those steps are and when we'll finally be able to plant these.
Well, it's going to take about 4 to 6 months for these to be rooted. So the way you tell, you kind of pull on them. If you feel resistance, that means they've already set roots.
Okay.
That's the time to get them out of the mist into a transitional area that's shady, cool, that you can still water.
Okay, so the mist is providing the moisture these plants need until they get those roots. But once that happens, we don't need the mist any longer.
That's right.
Okay, so out it goes into the transitional area. Then we want these to be potted up into a larger container to get bigger, but you don't just do that yet.
No, my trigger is to see roots coming out of the bottom. Otherwise, you can pull, and if the whole cell comes out whole, doesn't shatter, then it's ready to be potted into a 1 gallon.
Okay, now I want my cuttings to look like the plants that I see in the nursery when I go to buy them and spend big money, but they're much bigger and they're much fuller. So you're gonna bump these up into another container, but then how do you make them get to that fullness?
Make sure they stay fertilized and make sure that you keep them evenly moist. Don't let them dry out. And then be sure to give them pruning.
Because every time you make the cut, you're stimulating new growth, and typically for every 1 cut, you get 2 new branches.
That's right.
Great, so in about, what, a little over a year, we can have this kind of plant that we would pay for in the nursery. So a cutting like this, what would we pay for that plant?
A 1 gallon of this type of osmanthus runs about $25.
$25 for 1 cutting. We need to make more cuttings. When you're looking for the perfect medium to root your cuttings or pot your seedlings, the basic ingredients is almost always the same no matter what you buy, and it's usually sphagnum peat moss and perlite, and maybe some other minor ingredients mixed in. But these are the 2 stars of the show. So while you could spend some money and have it already pre-made, you don't have to. You could save a lot of money and buy it in bulk, and that's what I did right here. Both of these ingredients are readily available, and it's just a 50-50 mix. So all I do is just scoop out some of the peat moss. Now peat moss is really nice, it's very lightweight, and once you get it hydrated, it holds moisture very well, but the trick is getting it hydrated. So let's just start with 3 scoops of peat moss and 3 scoops of perlite. Perlite is a natural ingredient. It's expanded through heat to look like little pieces of popcorn. But the beauty of perlite is it adds a lot of drainage and airspace to your soil mix, and it also retains some moisture. So it's kind of the perfect combination here. Very lightweight medium, plenty of moisture retention, and lots of airspace. That's what you're looking for any of your seedlings or cuttings. That's all it takes. Got a cutting. Get that nice and wet, initially well hydrated, and this is all you need. And when you put the cutting in, don't push it all the way down to the bottom. Give it some space beneath it, and you're good to go. Whoa. Well, chances are you've dug up a plant or two in your day to relocate it to a different part of your landscape. Or maybe when you dug those plants up, you divided them or separated them, in which case you did a simple technique of plant propagation. It's a really effective form and it works great on perennials like these irises. But if you can do that, you can propagate any number of plants in your garden. Leaf cuttings are another super simple way to make more plants. Again, not all plants work well for this type of method, but perhaps the best known example is African violets. Other easy options are what we're doing here with begonias, succulents such as echeveria, and pineapple lily. With the begonias, the key is to make sure the point where the stem meets the leaf is firmly in contact with the soil. With the echeveria, the end of the leaf directly attached to the main stem has to have contact with the soil, since that's where the cells are located that will generate the roots. And with a lily, you just have to make sure you insert the leaf section into the soil in the same direction it was growing, so orientation is key. To keep it simple, Brie likes to make angled cuts and then plant the pointed end into the soil. Once you have your leaf cuttings inserted, keep them moist and in a shady location. But with leaf cuttings, misting is not required or even recommended, since if the leaf remains too wet, it can rot. But do make sure the soil media remains moist. After that, just fertilize periodically and plant them elsewhere once they've put on new growth. Providing a moist environment for our new cuttings is critical over the next several months, and there are a couple ways to provide that mist. One is to use a spray bottle and apply it several times a day. Now it works, but how practical is that really, especially in our busy lives? The other thing that you can do is put the system on autopilot, and it might be a lot easier than you think. Now you know those patio umbrellas that you've seen and that tubing is underneath it and it puts out that mist? Well, that same system can easily be applied to a potting bench like this to do the same thing. And that's what Brie has done. Now listen to how easy this is. You buy this kit in the store for about $20. Now, according to the labeling, it cuts the temperature down by about 20%, and that was one of the key objectives to their survival. The other thing, it's already pre-assembled. So basically you're just attaching it to a firm surface so that when the mist goes on, it goes down onto the plants. You attach that misting system to an automatic timer to come on several times a day, and you have it. The only other thing that you need to do is to provide an enclosed environment, and typically you do that with plastic. Drop the plastic down, keep the plants down low because that also helps keep them cool, and you're ready to go. And for only $15, that's a very good investment. Now, in case making more plants from cuttings, as we've seen Brie already demonstrate so far, is a little more than you want to take on for now, but you still want more plants and you want to try your hand at propagation, well, there's a very simple technique, and it's a matter of simply taking cuttings and sticking them into water. Now, some plants do well and some plants not so well. The ones you want to focus on are the ones that are foliage plants, such as basil and coleus and plectranthus and even sweet potato vine. Now, check this out. Brie took some cuttings about a week ago, and look at these roots, how they've already formed. Now, once they get to be about 1 inch long, like these are, they're ready to go in the ground. But the most important thing that you need to do once you put them in the ground is to continue to add water, because remember, these things have been living in water this whole time. So if you put them in the ground and don't water them after that, well, chances are they may not make it. So the hardest thing you've got to do once you put them in the ground is just to keep them watered. Now, when these are ready, are you going to ship these to me, or do I need to come back and get them?
You'll have to come back.
That's okay. That's one trip I don't mind. Thanks, Brie. Well, I hope today that you found a newfound confidence, or at least a curiosity for trying to start more plants yourself, because once you master the basics, I think you'll be very impressed with your newfound skills. Plus, it's the best way I know to add to a garden with special plants from special friends. Now, if you like what you saw today, you can watch the episode again, and you can also download an article on plant propagation. Everything we covered today, plus a whole lot more that we didn't have a chance to talk about. It's on our website under the show notes for this episode. It's growingagreenerworld.com. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Joe Lample, and we'll see you back here next time for more Growing a Greener World.
Well, you're trying to balance the relative humidity with the plants. Right? Respiration. I did it backwards. I gotta do it over. Okay, let's start again.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
What am I saying? What is my line?
We're trying to balance the relative humidity with the dew point of the relative medium of the hyperbole divided by the Celsius centigrade
It's
factor.
the plant's rate of respiration with the relative humidity.
Now you can continue your garden learning online in courses from me, Joe Lample, in my online gardening academy. Classes are designed to teach gardeners of all levels, from the fundamentals to master skills. Explore the courses available right now, plus new topics covering everything you need to know to grow like a pro. Take each class on your own schedule, from anywhere. Plus, you'll have opportunities to ask me questions about your specific garden in real time. Go to joegardner.com/learn for details today.